I've wanted to tell this story for a long time. Not everything that's happened in my house since we moved in, just one specific night. The kind of night that, even now, I still don't fully understand. It took me a long time to actually find the nerve to talk about it. So bear with me. My name is Alice. I'm a mother of 2 boys. My oldest, Adam, just turned 5, and my youngest, Arthur, is 1. My husband, Jack, works a job that keeps him in New York most weeks, while the rest of us live in Ohio. That's not exactly a short commute. Some nights he comes home late. Some nights, more nights than I'd like, he doesn't come home at all. Which means a lot of nights it's just me and the boys. I want to tell you about our house first, because I think it matters. It's not an old house, not falling apart, not the kind of place you'd look at and think, haunted. It's a normal, 2-story suburban house, the kind you'd drive past 100 times without a second glance. We bought it about 2 years before any of this happened. Young family, decent neighborhood, good schools nearby. On paper, it was exactly what we wanted. But almost from the beginning, there were things. Small things. The kind of things you explain away one at a time, but that add up if you're paying attention. The first one happened maybe 2 months after we moved in. Adam was barely 3 at the time. I was downstairs doing laundry, and I heard him upstairs, laughing. That big, delighted toddler laugh, like someone was playing with him. I called up the stairs. "Adam, who are you talking to, baby?" "My friend," he said. I didn't think much of it. Kids do that. Imaginary friends are normal. Every parenting book will tell you that. I went back to the laundry. It kept happening, though. Over weeks, over months. Always the same answer. My friend. And when I'd ask what his friend looked like, he'd just shrug and go back to playing. Once, when he was a little older and could explain things better, I asked him directly, "Is your friend a boy or a girl?" "A boy," he said immediately, like it was obvious. "He's bigger than me." "Does he have a name?" Adam thought about it for a second, the way little kids do when they're trying to remember something specific. "I don't think so. He just watches me play." I laughed it off at the time. You have to as a parent. You can't go down every rabbit hole your 3-year-old hands you, or you'd never sleep again. But I remember writing it down in my phone's notes app, just in case. A weird little habit I'd picked up. Adam's friend, boy, bigger than him, just watches. There were other things too. Doors that I was sure I'd closed, standing open again 10 minutes later. The baby monitor in Arthur's room would occasionally pick up static that almost sounded like breathing, close to the microphone, and then nothing. Jack would tell me I was overtired, that new moms hear things, that the house was just settling, the way old pipes and new framing do. I wanted to believe him. Mostly I did. But there's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with being alone in a house at night with 2 small kids and a husband 3 states away. And in that loneliness, you start paying attention to things you'd otherwise brush off in daylight. By the time the boys were 5 and 1, I had a system. Whenever Jack was away, which by then was often, I'd turn on every light in the house the moment the sun started going down. Every hallway light, every lamp, the porch light, all of it. Once it got fully dark, I didn't leave the bedroom unless I absolutely had to. I want to be honest with you. I'm not like that anymore. These days, being alone with the kids overnight doesn't faze me at all. You get used to it. But back then, in those early years, I hadn't made peace with it yet. Every time Jack's car pulled out of the driveway for another work trip, there was this little voice in my head going, "Why am I the one who has to be alone with this? Why does it always have to be me?" It wasn't really about being scared of the dark. It was something quieter than that. A feeling, almost, that the house was different at night than it was during the day. Like it had a daytime version of itself and a nighttime version, and only one of them was friendly. So on the night I want to tell you about, it was a Thursday heading into Friday. Jack still wasn't home. Adam, my oldest, had skipped his nap that afternoon, which meant by 5 o'clock he was already down for the night, out cold. The kind of toddler sleep where a marching band could walk through the room and he wouldn't stir, which left me with Arthur. If you've ever had a 1-year-old, you know exactly what that's like. At that age, they're not babies anymore. They're small, fast, opinionated little tornadoes who've just discovered they have legs and intend to use them constantly. Arthur was already exhausting me by early evening, climbing on furniture, getting into cabinets, refusing to settle for more than 90 seconds at a time. I was tired. Genuinely, bone-deep tired. The kind that makes you a little reckless about your own comfort just to get 5 minutes of peace. So I scooped him up and said, "Hey Arthur, come on, let's video call your aunt." I called my older sister, Julia. We did this fairly often, partly because I missed her, partly, I'll admit, because having someone else's voice in the room made the house feel less empty when Jack was gone. Julia had a daughter of her own, Daisy, just about a year older than Arthur, so the two kids would sometimes babble at each other through the screen while we actually talked. We set up in my bedroom, sitting against the headboard, phone propped up so the camera caught both of us. Arthur, true to form, had zero interest in actually participating. The second the call connected, he wriggled out of my lap and went tearing off across the room to go terrorize a basket of stuffed animals in the corner. So in the end, it was just me and Julia on the call, talking the way sisters do. About nothing, about everything, about how exhausted I was, about how Daisy had just started saying full sentences. At some point, and I genuinely don't even remember why, just one of those idle things you do during a long call, I flipped my screen layout. Normally, my own little camera box sits small in the corner, while the other person's video takes up the whole screen. I switched it so mine was big and Julia's was the small one. And the way you do when your own face is suddenly huge on a screen in front of you, I started doing the thing every woman does without even thinking about it, checking my face. Is there a breakout starting on my chin? Does my skin look tired? The completely mindless self-scan you do while you're half listening to a conversation. That's when I saw him. To my left, right at my shoulder, close, and I mean close, like 2 centimeters from my actual skin. A head, resting almost perfectly level with mine, angled in exactly the way someone leans in when they want to get into frame of a photo. It was a child. A boy, somewhere around 8 or 9 years old, wearing a plain yellow shirt. And his face? I'll never forget the expression. Wasn't scary, exactly. It was curious, like a kid peeking over your shoulder to see what you're looking at on your phone. Like he genuinely, innocently wanted to be part of the video call. I had never seen this child before in my life. Not in my neighborhood, not at Adam's school pickup line, not anywhere. And he was right there, perfectly in frame, clear as anything on my screen, his head practically touching mine. I froze for half a second, and then I screamed. I couldn't help it. It just came out of me. And here's the part that still keeps me up at night sometimes. While I was staring at the screen, frozen, mid-scream, I could see Julia's reaction happening in real time in the little box in the corner. She wasn't looking at me confused, wondering why I'd screamed. She was looking past me, at him. I didn't know what else to do, so I did the only thing my body seemed capable of in that moment. I pretended to fix my hair. I started shifting my position on the bed, scooting to the right, then again, putting distance between myself and whatever was sitting at my shoulder, all while acting like I was just adjusting how I was sitting, tucking hair behind my ear, casual, normal, anything to avoid acknowledging out loud what I'd just seen, because some part of me thought if I didn't say it, maybe it wasn't real. That's when little Daisy, Julia's daughter, who'd been on her mother's lap the entire call, half watching the screen the way toddlers do, suddenly went rigid and said, clear as a bell, "Mama, Mama, scary!" And then she scrambled down off Julia's lap and bolted, completely out of frame, gone. My sister, and I love her for this because she is one of the most painfully honest, straightforward people I know, she does not have a dramatic bone in her body, turned back to the camera and said, totally matter of fact, the way you'd comment on the weather, "Hey Alice, who's that? Why is there a little kid at your place this late at night?" I felt my whole body go cold. "What do you mean, who?" I said, even as I kept scooting further away. I couldn't bring myself to say anything else out loud. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else. So I just said, "Okay, I'm going to hang up now. It's getting late." And I ended the call before she could ask anything else. The second the screen went black, I forced myself to actually look. Properly look, not through a phone camera, directly to my left where he'd been sitting, practically against my shoulder. Nothing. No one there. The space beside me was just empty bed, empty air, like he'd never been there at all. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type, but I opened my messages and texted Julia. "Julia, what did you actually see just now?" She wrote back almost instantly. "See what?" "The thing next to me, on my left, right above my shoulder, the one that was in the video call with us." "Oh, yeah, the little boy. What about him? Who is he, Alice?" My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I typed the next part. "Julia, I'm home alone with my kids right now. Adam's already asleep. Arthur's been playing across the room the whole time. There is nobody else in this house. Nobody." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared a few times before her response came through. "Then who was that?" "That's what I don't know," I wrote back. "He was just there, and then he was gone. Like he vanished." "Alice, that might have been an apparition," she wrote. And honestly, somewhere in the back of my mind, I'd already arrived at the same conclusion myself. What scared me more wasn't even the idea of it. It was that my sister, 2 states away, looking at a phone screen, had seen the exact same thing I had. Then she added one more message that I don't think I'll ever forget. "Daisy saw him too, you know. So that's 3 of us who saw him. Me, you, and her." "That's exactly it," I wrote back. "That's what makes it so much worse." I didn't sleep that night, obviously. I sat up with every light in the bedroom on, Arthur eventually worn out enough to crash beside me on the bed, and I just stared at the door. At nothing in particular, running the whole thing over and over in my head, trying to find some explanation that made it less unsettling. A reflection, a shadow, something on the lens. But none of it held up, because 3 separate people, 3, had independently looked at the same screen and seen the same child in the same position at the same moment. The next morning, in the unglamorous, sleep-deprived light of day, I did what I imagine a lot of parents would do. I went straight to Adam's room while he was eating breakfast and asked him, as casually as I could manage, "Hey buddy, your friend, the one you play with sometimes, does he wear a yellow shirt?" Adam didn't even look up from his cereal. "Yeah, that's him." I asked if his friend had ever come into Mommy's room. Adam shrugged, the universal toddler gesture for, "Why are you asking me things I don't think about?" "Sometimes. He likes watching." I didn't push further. I'm not sure I wanted to know more, honestly. There's a point where you stop asking questions because some answers, once you have them, you can't put back. When Jack finally got home that weekend, I told him everything. To his credit, he didn't dismiss it the way he had with some of the smaller things before. The static on the monitor, the doors. Maybe because this time there were 3 witnesses and a screenshot's worth of memory burned into my brain. Maybe because even he couldn't explain away my 1-year-old niece pointed at the exact same spot and called it scary. We talked, eventually, to a couple of neighbors who'd lived on the street far longer than we had. The kind of old-timers who know every house's history because they watched most of them get built. One mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that years before our house existed, that whole stretch of land had been part of a much older property, and that there'd been a fire decades back that the city eventually cleared and redeveloped. He didn't know details. Nobody really did. It was just one of those half-remembered neighborhood stories that everyone's heard a version of, but nobody can fully confirm. I don't know if that's connected to what I saw. I want to be honest with you about that. I'm not going to pretend I have it all figured out, tied up with a neat explanation. I genuinely don't know who that little boy was, why he appeared so clearly that one specific night, or why, of all the strange little things that had happened in our house before, that was the one moment he chose to actually be seen. By 3 people, at once, through a phone screen of all things. It's been a few years now. Adam's older. He doesn't talk about his friend anymore. Kids age out of that, I think, the same way they age out of believing in monsters under the bed, even when, in our case, I'm not entirely sure it was ever just imagination. Every once in a while, though, something small still happens. A door left open that I know I closed. A flicker on the baby monitor late at night. Nothing as direct, as undeniable, as that night on the video call, but enough that I still turn on every light in the house when Jack's away. Old habits, I guess. I never did find out who he was. I don't know if he was ever a real boy, once, a long time ago, in whatever stood on this land before our house did. I don't know if he's still here, watching, the way Adam used to describe him. Just curious. Just present, never once trying to hurt anyone. Maybe that's almost a comforting thought in its own strange way. Or maybe that's exactly the part that should scare me the most. Either way, that's my story. There's more I could tell you about this house, honestly, but I think this is enough for tonight. Alice. If this story gave you chills, subscribe for more real-life paranormal encounters from families just like mine. Comment below. Do you think the boy in the yellow shirt is still in that house?